Hello, my name is Dr. Lauren Powell. I am a board-certified family medicine physician. I'm also known as a culinary doctor, and I am co-hosting UrbanMD TV, the number one health show in the U.S. And this is UrbanMD TV's Back to School Virtual Health Summit. I'm a doctor, but I'm a mother. And these topics have never been more important, I feel like, ever in my life than when I became a mother. So we have a jammed-packed show full of all of the things, all of the topics and things that parents and kids, community members, who's ever supporting that child wants to learn about. We're going to talk to Dr. Shayna Smith, an amazing pediatrician here in Atlanta. We're going to talk to Dr. Christopher Allen, a sleep medicine specialist, because y'all know that sleep, kids and adults, that sleep, we struggle. And then we're going to talk with Dr. Sherri Simpson Broadwater, my favorite board-certified children and adult psychiatrist. So it's a jammed-packed session. You may want to grab a sheet of paper. You may want to take notes because this is just going to be a lot of juicy, great information that you're going to refer back to throughout the year when these things come up. You're going to want to have something to reference back to. So let's get started. Dr. Smith, can I bring you to the stage? Can I bring you to the virtual stage? How you doing?
Yes, you can. I'm doing good today.
Good. Listen, we share a lot of patients.
Mm-hmm.
We share a lot of patients. And I feel like you send me the kids after they're almost the size of an adult, like they're like a 16-year-old that's like taller than you. And they're in the pediatrician's office with little kids, and they're like, okay, it's time to see a grown-up doctor. Or you send me the parents of the kids who are like, you know what? While I'm in here bringing my kid to the doctor every 6 months, I should probably take care of myself too. So thank you so much for that. I want to talk about, and you have a child that has gone off to college, so you're in a little bit of a different season. But what is like some of the biggest things that you notice when kids transition from like summer, that schedule, that eating, that sleeping, that, and then they're going into the school year? Like, what's like the biggest transition you feel like they experience?
Summer, I see that kids are more laid back with their eating.
Mm,
Sometimes they snack a lot, lots of popsicles, ice cream, lots of treats in the summer. And they're a little bit more sedentary for some children. And then
mm.
when the school starts, it's more like the parents want to sometimes make their lunch. Sometimes they do the school lunch, so it's a little bit more structured, and their eating is a little bit more on schedule when school starts. So it's more of
Mm.
the scheduled eating and the more structured eating once school starts.
What about, you feel like people are like similarly, is it hard to transition to like a schedule because maybe kids were a little bit not having to be somewhere at a certain time, and now you have a structured, not, you have to like be up, we got to be out the door, we have to be, our minds got to be ready to work. Do parents complain about that or get asked for advice about how do we transition our kid well? What do
They
you
ask all the time, Dr. Lauren, about how to transition their kids well. I always give them the advice to start practicing a little bit before school
Mm,
starts. Because if you practice a little bit before school start, it won't be like a shock to the system when you have to go to sleep on time, when you have to eat on a schedule, when you have to wake up in the morning. And then we notice a lot of people also ask about what foods should their kids eat now that school's starting so that they could have more an advantage, academically or more
mm,
advantage with their sports. And so I try to get everybody a head start to start doing these routines,
yeah.
maybe a couple weeks before school start, because we understand, we're normal. We understand that summertime is more lax than when school's in.
Dr. Smith, I feel like I try to keep my kid like on a consistent schedule because I see like the negative consequences when he's not. So I feel like the hardest challenge I have is like when I go and visit like family, I'm still trying to keep him on a schedule because I know I'm the one that's going to have to deal with him. But I always feel like it's the family that's like, no, just let him stay up. Why are you trying to make them go to sleep? Or why does he have to take a nap at this time? So sometimes I feel like it's almost easier to just keep them on schedule. And I know that's like kind of sometimes harder because parents have stuff and things like that. But I feel like it's so hard once they get off schedule. For me, it's been hard to like be off schedule and then get him back on schedule.
You are so right. It can be very difficult for some children. Children thrive on routine boundaries, what the expectations are, and sometimes they really flourish in those type of environments.
Mhm.
So I'm like you, I liked my child to be on a schedule. I might have let him go to sleep just a little bit later than usual. But we tried to keep a schedule with him, even practicing some schoolwork in
Mm.
the summer, reading books in the summer, doing some summer enrichment, just to keep him aware that this is kind of how our house goes. You are so right with visiting other people. Sometimes they think we're too strict as parents, and so they just let it ride. And that's
Yes.
really difficult when they come back to the town and they go back in their parental homes or their caregivers' homes, and then they want to put them on a schedule and push them in school. So it's a lot of sometimes pushback
Mm.
from the kids in that situation because they're off their structured environment. So you have to sometimes take a couple weeks and get them back used to
Mhm.
what we all know is best for them at that in that time.
Yes, yes. And so as kids get back to school, like how important is for them to have their school physicals and kind of just make sure they're doing well as they prepare for school, maybe it's sports or just anything pertaining to school.
Yeah, so it's been it's certain ages that the schools want them to have a certain type of physical, so they have to present to us and get their physical. It is so important on all different levels. So the medical aspect is a lot of times during these physicals, we may find we may do a hearing screening that's
Mm.
abnormal. The parents didn't even realize that certain decibels they couldn't hear, or a vision
Mm.
screening that's abnormal. These things, if you can't hear clearly, if you can't see clearly, if you don't have your asthma medications or refills when school starts, if the child doesn't know what the expectations are them about other behavioral things we talk about during the visit, we talk about sleeping, eating, being active, all the ways for them to have a successful year, then it just pushed them off.
Mm.
And then we're playing catch up later on in the year. So I noticed that sometimes. So I'm so happy when kids and parents bring their kids in right before school start, get everything checked from head to toe, all their refills done. If they had
Mm.
any questions or concerns in the previous year on behavior or anything like that, we can kind of discuss it and come up with a short-term plan to kind of watch and see what happens when school start. And then we feel like we're going into the year with more success
That's
than
good.
playing catch up.
That's good. And you're coming in like a like almost like stable. You're not in crisis. You're not, it's not an emergency. And it also helps us just like establish a good relationship because if you could just come in while things are like well and you're getting to know me, my child, now when something, happens, I just feel more comfortable because we have a relationship and you've seen my kid now at like a almost like a um baseline place.
Yes, and I give the kid a lot of opportunity to talk during that visit.
Mm.
They kind of present to me, how they think their health is. And sometimes I can give little suggestions and they'll actually listen during that visit. Then when they come in with pneumonia, or ear infection, those visits are sometimes a little quicker. Like you said, it's in crisis. They need something right then versus us just trying to talk and gather ourselves.
And then, Dr. Smith, like when it comes to back to school, I know one of the things that's always top of mind is like now we get all the germs and which don't just affect the kid, but like now the parent. So what are some things that we can do to just kind of help us stay well? I mean, I know some things there's like nothing we can do, but do you have any advice in terms of for like the kid and the parent? Like how do we just stay well during cold and flu season as we get into the fall and winter?
Yes, school just started for some of us and hasn't started for others. And where we live, school has pretty much started, and we're already seeing a lot of sick visits. The germs are just in the schools. They're closer together. They're not out at the beaches
Mm.
anymore. So people are sicker. But I tell everybody to make sure their kids learn how to wash their hands. And
Mm.
then maybe when they come home, take those clothes off and just wash their hands, put a fresh shirt on. So you won't be carrying around germs. Also, like you said, if you went to your physical ahead of time and you saw the doctor, then getting a head start is that too, because you can talk to them about anything that was happening last year. And sometimes the doctor may give them the refills they need or the accommodations or the things that they need for school starting. Another thing, some people are open to trying a healthy diet. So we
Mhm.
know that a healthy diet also helps with the health and wellness of children. So we can definitely discuss that. Sleep is critical. I know you'll be talking about sleep. Sleep is critical in the health and wellness of a child. I mean, it's a whole lifestyle. It's not a one pill thing. It's more of a behavioral thing that you have to do, even for just viruses and colds and coughs. So you gotta do the best you can taking care of yourself. And sleeping's one, washing the hands is other, and eating well is the next.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I know it's like basic, but it's like not. It's like we still need those reminders, like to go back to those things. One last thing I wanted to ask, I know there's so much conversation going on around vaccinations. There's been a lot of stuff, politically, there's just a lot of stuff on social about vaccinations. If I'm a parent, what's a good way for me to just like have a conversation with my pediatrician about vaccinations? If I'm like, doc, you know, just I feel like my kid gets a lot of vaccinations. Are there options? Can I spread things out? Like, just what's the best way for a parent? If I'm a parent, what's the best way for me to approach my doctor just to have like a healthy conversation about vaccines?
Yes, and you're right. Right now there are a lot. Vaccines are a big political thing. It's a lot of misconceptions. I think that we go back to the science. So when if a parent want to ask their doctor, you believe in your doctor. You're going to their doctor for their expertise. So when you approach the doctor, you can ask your questions, see if they have any expertise. A lot of times, the doctors had an experience with a patient that may have had one of those illnesses that their child is actually getting vaccinated against. Think
Mhm.
about it. We all do residency and training, and so we may have some experience, so we can give you just what the signs and symptoms of that infection is and talk about the pros versus the cons of being vaccinated for that particular infection. And so I stand by that.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Dr. Smith, I'm going to bring you back when we
Okay.
talk about nutrition because I think we'll have a great,
Critical.
healthy, nutritious conversation. Thank you so much. Next up, Dr. Christopher Allen, my brother from Wayne State University, where amazing doctors are made. So glad to have you back. We got to chat on UrbanMD Season 2, which you all need to make sure. You need to make sure that you tune in coming this fall. Follow us on social media so that you know when the season is dropping. But Dr. Christopher Allen, thank you so much for being here. You're a sleep medicine doctor, and you're also a father of how many?
Two.
Two
I have a
children.
9-year-old, soon to be 11-year-old. And so, yeah, we're in the thick of it. And I'm just just very fortunate, Dr. Lauren. Anytime we're in the same arena, and this is a virtual arena, it's great things happen. So good seeing you.
Good to see you too. Now, listen, sleep is important. It's important for our kids. It's important for the parents. I think the kids' sleep can really affect the parents' sleep. So you've been talking a lot on social about sleep, things that you would tell parents if you knew they wouldn't get mad at you about their kids and their sleep. So
Yeah.
why don't you just give me just a couple of like 3 to 4, just like fundamental things when it comes to your kids' sleep?
The bottom line, sleep is important. And the thing is that, if they're fussy, it doesn't mean that they're just a fussy child. They're probably not getting good sleep. And I know earlier we were talking about starting school back, and just because it's summer, consistency still matters. And with all that being said, and I know I have this series on social media where I say like I give them hard truths. I give the hard truth because knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And if you know what's out there, first you got to give yourself grace. Now, all the stuff I say, do I do that myself 100% of the time? Definitely not. But knowing what's out there, and even with starting school back, a lot of people already started school and it's like, oh, my kid, he's still not on that good sleeping schedule. And I even put some things out because the best thing to do for our kids and for the people that haven't started yet, and it was said earlier, the bottom line, start getting them to go to bed sooner. And say if they've been staying up super late, you don't try to make them go to bed at that school bedtime. You can start like weaning them down to where they need to go. So like the first night, do it 15 to 30 minutes earlier, then change it every couple of nights until you get to that goal bedtime. And even if school started And you're noticing it's like, I'm not at that time yet. They were up till like midnight and they're supposed to be going to bed at like 9. The bottom line is, one, give yourself grace, and you can still like wean down to that time even during school. And the most important thing is that consistency is going to be key, especially with the wake time. You have a consistent wake time that's going to help drive your bedtime.
And so, Dr. Smith, if or Dr. Allen, if you're like, okay, yeah, you need to put your kid to bed early, but what if my kid won't go to sleep?
And see,
What do you want
and,
me
and
to do? He's
and
screaming,
so
crying,
well, and
asking
so
for snacks.
I know, so different ages, different solutions. And because even with children, and you got to think about it because, a lot of kids are having their child go to school for the first time. So they're like, they have to be in a schedule. It's like, whoa, mom, whoa, dad, why are you getting me like to go to bed at this time? But the consistency matters. And there's even a diagnosis that's called behavioral insomnia of childhood.
Mm.
And back in the day, there used to be two different types. And if you think about it, when you're a baby, you rock, rock, rock to sleep. They start crawling. You start rocking them to sleep. They walk a little bit. You got them on their lap, and you walk them to sleep. I mean, you rock them to sleep on your lap, and then all of a sudden they get a big boy bed, and so you put them in the bed, and they're like, "All right, good night." And so they're like, "Whoa, mom, dad, what's going on?" And so that type back in the day, they used to call that sleep onset association, just a fancy way of saying that like I need mom, I need dad to fall asleep. And so if you start noticing that you have that, there's things to do. Like if they don't want to go to sleep, you can sit down there with them. And the cool thing is that, well, two things. One, if you're okay with being with them until they fall asleep in bed, then I'm okay with it. But then that's not teaching them that independence.
Yeah.
And if you're fine with that, that's fine. But it gets to the point where a lot of parents, they want that time. You're back in, yeah, they're in bed. You get some time before you actually go to bed yourself. And so what I usually tell parents, at that time, when they're laying in bed, rub their back, and when they fall asleep, you're not looking at a phone. You can look at a book. And you're not talking to them. You're not being mean or cold. And then after 10 days, you just wean yourself. I mean, 7 to 10 days, you can wean yourself closer to the door. So I say, start next to the bed. Week 2, take that chair in the middle of the room. You're still in there, they're laying down. Week 3, you put it at the door. Week 4, the door's outside. And then that's weaning away. And so that's like that whole sleep onset association. And then you got the other kid that like, mommy, I want some milk. Mommy, can I read another story? Mommy, where's daddy at? All that stuff that's happening. And so what you do once they're in bed and they come up, I call them bedtime passes. You get like 2 index cards, you put a number 1 and a number 2 on it, and you can color it and say, hey, this is for you. And so if they want something, they want milk, you go over, they give them the pass. All right, here's your milk. Now go back to bed. And then they come back and they're out of pass. And that gives them that independence to say, like, do I really want to use this or not? So if they don't want to go to bed, that's what happens. And if it gets to the point, that consistency, as long as you're consistent, they might not like it, but that's the biggest thing that helps children. Even if they don't like it at first, the consistency is key. And I remember earlier we were talking about when you're going out of town and you're with families, like, no, let them stay up. I'm the same way with my kids. And sometimes my wife, she's like, you know what? It's like, I know they're going to miss their bedtime. I'm a sleep doctor. So I'm like, all right, look, it's an hour past. So like, we got to go. So, but all in all, it's the consistency is going to help.
One thing I noticed, kids aren't going to say like, I'm not getting enough sleep or like, I'm tired. And they might not even like act tired. I feel like my kid, whenever I say, wake up, let's go, he's like, all right, let's go do it. I'm down. Like, it doesn't really matter what time it is. But then we started noticing that when we let him sleep a certain amount of time, consistently 10 hours, he was so much calmer.
Oh, yeah.
So we looked and we're like, I think he was literally just tired. So when he's at school and they're like, yeah, he doesn't sit or he's doing laps around the school, it's like, yeah, he was tired. He just, he was just tired. And that was like, but I wouldn't have recognized it as he was tired because if at 6 o'clock and I need to get to work early and I wake up at 6, he's up and he's ready to go. So I think it's just, interesting at different ages, you have to just kind of look for different signs that your kid may not be getting enough sleep because they may not be able to say, I'm tired. I need to sleep longer.
course. And the funny thing about those red flags, you think if someone's tired, it's like, oh, they should be sleepy. But no, in children, it comes off them having trouble focusing. They can be very irritable, moody, and
Mm,
even sometimes mimic ADHD symptoms. Like, for example, a sleep disorder like obstructive sleep apnea, I always look at kids that might have ADHD symptoms because I'm also a neurologist as
mm,
well. I ask them about their sleep because if they have a sleep disorder, they're sleep deprived because they're not getting quality sleep.
mm.
That can also happen if you shorten their sleep. And so they're not going to be like tired. They'll be like, it's like the whole like nervous system is dysregulated. And so the cortisol and everything is up and they're moody. And, adults, we're tired. And kids, it comes off differently. And it's funny, we think it's just in babies. We have that cranky babies like, oh, you're just tired. No, it happens in toddlers, it happens in adolescents, and even teenagers.
Yes, that's so true. That's so good. And I know we're talking a lot about the kids, but Dr. Allen, you see kids and adults. So I just want to emphasize just like how important good sleep is for the parents too, and for their
Yes.
overall well-being as they are like parenting kids that are going back to school and being well rested so that they can be patient, so that they can feel well themselves and so they can be alert and do the things that they need to do and so that they can have healthy blood pressure and like all the things. I just want you, if you could just highlight just in general why it's good for adults also.
And I'm glad you bring that up. And it's funny, that's one of the things in the hard truths I tell people is like, if you're staying up and you're not showing those good tools for your child, then how do you expect them to have those good tools as well? And before you can take care of others, you got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so that consistency is going to help getting quality sleep and making sure for adults, you need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And if you're having problems getting that, then that's when you need to talk to a sleep professional. Or also, if you are getting 7 to 9 hours and you still don't feel like you're refreshed and alert, or your bed partner saying like some weird things are happening, like you're snoring, tossing and turning, punching and fighting, then that's when you should get like a sleep professional involved because that's going to help. And the thing is that will help adults and kids too, like that wind down time. Like when it's about an hour before bedtime, that's when you're cutting away from the screens because like using the screens and your phone is kind of like taking an espresso shot right before bed. And you don't want to do that because then it's tricking your brain. Back in the day when your brain was made, it didn't account for cell phones. It didn't count for blue
Mm,
light that was happening. And so you want to start that wind down time. Blackout curtains, if you have them, that's great. White noise, that's great as well. And then that bedtime ritual for your kids, that
mm,
helps them as well. And even when I see all my patients, I always ask what their ritual is, and they're like, "What ritual? Ritual?" And so I'm like, "Okay, we need to get that involved because then when they know, the consistency is
mhm.
going to help with them."
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Okay, my last question for you, Dr. Allen. What are your thoughts on wearables? Should we be monitoring our sleep? Is that a waste of money? Is it useful data? What are your thoughts?
So my thing is, one thing I like about wearable devices, it starts the conversation of sleep. So if you're wearing it, you're looking at your sleep. It's like, oh, it's like, okay, like, I mean, I have a wearable device and it can record my sleep. So it can be okay. But then I tell people, like, if you don't get it addressed, you're just monitoring your bad sleep. And so, looking at it, and it's not just about like what stage of sleep you're in. Like you can look at it and it's really good at saying like when you're asleep, but when you wake up in the middle, they're still working on that data to help it. And this came, it made a lot of advancements over these last couple of years. So I feel like wearable devices, I love them because it starts the conversation, but it doesn't stop there. So if
Yeah.
you're looking at it and some of them look at the oxygen. So if your oxygen is going down, that's a conversation. There's some that have snore monitors. If it says you're snoring, that's another conversation because snoring is not normal. Now, does it mean that there's a problem? No. It means that you should start the conversation. And even in your kids, like if you're noticing if they're snoring or sleeping with their neck arch or their mouth open, those are warning signs to look, into it. And even kids got wearable devices as well.
Yeah, that's good. I think the biggest thing I've learned from my wearable device last year is I just noticed like when I consumed alcohol, how trash my sleep was. And so it was really a big motivator for me to not drink because I'm like, I just don't feel like feeling like that. I just don't feel like it, you know? And so
Yeah.
not that I never have a beverage, but I just literally decline a lot more because it's like depending on what I have going on the next day, it's like it's just not real messing up my sleep.
Yeah,
It's not.
it's like taking a machete and just chopping up your sleep. And a lot of people's like, oh yeah, it helps me fall asleep. And we know that. It'll help you fall asleep, but your quality and your stages of sleep are dysregulated.
All right, Dr. Allen, sleep doctor, hang around because I'm probably going to bring you back a little bit later. But thanks so much. Always a wealth of information. Y'all be sure to tune in to season 2 of UrbanMD because Dr. Christopher Allen is there too, giving more amazing sleep info. Thank you so much, Dr. Allen.
Oh, thank you.
Next, Dr. Smith, I want to bring you back because I want to talk about some food stuff because you like to eat healthy, like I like to eat healthy. I think you and I both value food and in the role that it plays. Remind me, are you plant-based?
Yes, I'm plant-based. Yes.
Was your son plant-based too?
He was mainly plant-based,
Okay.
yes.
Now, was
He's a
that
big boy
hard?
too.
Yeah, he was a big boy.
I know, so you can get your protein from the plants, right? But yes, it was, we started it just because we wanted to be healthier. We wanted less inflammation, we wanted more energy. And so that's how we started it. And at first I was kind of like, do you want to stop it? And my son is the one that said, let's keep it going. So we have.
That's good. Um, Dr. Smith, I read this stat and I wondered if you knew this, that 40% of kids K through 12 pack their lunch. 60% are buying their lunch. 90% of parents said they would have their child choose a school lunch if it was free. The number one reason that parents choose usually to pack their lunch is cost. Now, recently, over the past year, the cost of food has gone up a lot. So it's almost becoming more expensive to pack your child's lunch than it is for them to purchase lunch at school.
Yes.
I want to know, what are your thoughts on, and I know it can vary a lot for school, but what are your thoughts on like just like the quality of food that our kids are being served at school?
What I'm seeing in my practice is most of the time it depends on what school they go to. Most kids go to public schools, and unfortunately, they are not equipped with the money or budget to provide the kind of foods that I prefer. So those kids are going to get food that is mostly white, processed. And when I do ask the patients, what about the vegetables? They say they didn't look right or they don't have any flavor. So I can see that it is difficult for the school districts to provide everything that we want to, the colors of the rainbow. So I can see that happening. Sometimes when my patients may go to a private school, sometimes they have these chefs and things like that. So they have a little bit more of a variety. So that's what I'm seeing with that.
And how important do you feel like that is? I mean, this is like their lunch for the most part. So like, how do you feel like if a kid is not getting nutritious food at lunch, like how can that show up in school performance, in their behavior?
It definitely shows up. And if you think about it, Dr. Lawrence, sometimes the kid will do school breakfast and school lunch and a snack sometimes just in the environment of school and what's provided by that school. And like I said, if most of that food is refined sugars and carbohydrates and not made with vegetables and fruits, in which where you get the antioxidants and some of those anti-inflammatory types of things, we can see it in irritability, right? And like Dr. Allen was speaking about, we can see it in signs of ADHD or somebody that can't pay attention because of the poor quality of their food. Some kids just say, I'm not eating any of it because I do like the food at my house. So some of the kids are actually hangry, and so they may not eat at all. I have some kids that sometimes lose weight a little bit when school start because they're not eating the food. And then I see some kids gaining weight, which that's a whole nother issue with obesity and the complications that happen with obesity on a highly processed food diet.
I remember I had one patient who was telling me that like at school, his elementary school daughter was drinking like chocolate milk every like afternoon, and he was like, why are you like, you don't even really like chocolate milk, why are you drinking it every day? And she was like, well, if we finish a carton of chocolate milk we get candy. So she was literally drinking it so she could get candy. But it's so I think some of these things are just like kind of odd behaviors that are just not even like, I don't even know where it kind of comes from, and it's like the parents don't always know like these are these things that are being like done at school. Like, what?
Yeah.
Drink chocolate milk to get candy? Like, why? That doesn't even make sense. And I don't even know why that would be a thing. But
Yeah, I think a lot of my parents trust the schools, because you send them to the school. It's the school in your neighborhood. You
yeah.
think that it's government regulated or state regulated or county regulated, so you feel like they have your best, their best. They really want to give them the best. But I am a packed food person. I've packed my son's food from 5 to 18. And
Mm,
that sounds crazy, but I knew that I can only control what I can control. And if I can put some real food in his lunchbox, that'll be the best for him and even his academic performance, his
mm,
athletic performance. And so that's what I did. And Dr. Lauren, everything doesn't have to be as expensive. So
yeah.
yes, there are some expensive things, and sometimes the packaged foods are less money, but you get some brown rice and some black beans. It sounds simple and it sounds weird to send for school lunch, but some things you can pack and make into an easy burrito or something like
Mhm.
that. And it's not super expensive unless you're trying to do something a little bit more extravagant or buying them some of those specialty snacks. You can kind of do it on some type of budget if you plan.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. That is true. Um, And I feel like at my kid's school he goes to now, it's like a plant-based menu. And initially he wasn't really eating the food. And so I remember them asking me if I wanted to like send food um to school with him. And I was like, man, okay, so that means I'd have to like cook something. And I decided not to because I was like, let me just keep giving him the opportunity to eat what everybody else is eating. And I was so thankful that I did because he really eats better at school almost than he does at home because he kind of just sees everybody else is eating beans. And so he'll eat beans because, it's kind of like this social thing that's happening. And so I think that exposure piece is just really important. And I try to do certain things like bring healthy snacks to the school, like, because maybe they're not supplying it, but look, like I brought like smoothies for everybody to have, or, other things that I feel like can just help introduce some of those nutritious food. Um, what would you say are just some important things that kids can eat? And I know you mentioned it before when you talked, just what are some good things, quick, easy things that parents can give their kids to just kind of support their all like academic performance, their focus, and like being alert and being very present?
Well, like I talked about, real food is the best food. And sometimes just the easiest thing is a piece of fruit.
Mhm.
You think that you have to do something extravagant, but if you give them some fruit, you're actually giving them some fresh food. And we know that the benefits of fruit is natural sugars, it has antioxidants most of the time. It has water in it sometimes.
Mhm.
So these are all things that are already really good. You think about that the kid needs some carbohydrates, but I think more on the complex
Yeah.
carbohydrates, fiber, wheat, things like that, brown rice instead of white rice, sweet potatoes instead of regular potatoes. And sometimes a potato is relatively cheap. So that's
Yeah.
something too. You want to give them some healthy fats because they need that for their brain development. So, things with avocado. Sometimes people put a little olive oil in things, but that's a little bit healthier than just straight, processed fats from processed foods. And then we want to make sure they get some protein. And, that's always a debate on how much protein does a child need. And people think sometimes it's more than they do, but and some kids just don't like meat. So meat
Mhm.
is one, of course, fish, but I try to tell people to make sure they get the lean cuts if they can, and not the things that are fried and crispy, because then there we are again in the same situation. And then, beans, tofu, those things for the kids that don't want to eat the meat. So we need, fats, protein, carbohydrates, but in natural sugars are normal. Not a lot of juices, unfortunately. They're going to get you a sugar rush, and that kid may be very energetic after lunch, and then it crashes, and everybody's wondering why the class is half asleep and had that rush and won't pay attention and running around. And sometimes that's just what the kid consumes. So real food is the best food if possible.
That's good. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Always such a breadth of knowledge. Next to the stage, I would like to bring Dr. Sherri Simpson Broadwater, psychiatrist to both adults and children. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Sherri.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
All right. So we're going to talk mental health.
Whew, what about mental health?
Okay. So, I was thinking, kids aren't going to say necessarily like, Mom, I'm sad, or I'm feeling anxious. They may not always use that type of vocabulary. So how do we identify the mental well-being of our child, or if they're not doing well?
Well, I'm going to say something a little bit different, because some kids may tell you. There are a lot of kids who are aware. And there is this emotional wheel that is simplistic with 5 symptoms. 5 feelings and emotions, with the faces, with colors, to the most complex. And I think one thing that parents can do is to start really, really early in helping our sweeties sort of identify what they are feeling. So that's one thing that we can do. Another thing we can do is to monitor their behaviors and their routine and their schedule. So are they waking up the same way? Are they transitioning the same way? How are they interacting with peers, coming home, and then after? So really just looking at their routines and how they're engaging those things can help us to know how they are doing.
And how important is someone's learning environment? How often do you see that that's kind of playing a role in how they're feeling? Whether they're in a setting where other children look like them or don't look like them, whether they're, just I want to know your thoughts on that.
The academic environment is so important, that the academic environment aligns with who your child is individually, who the family is, and culturally. And so it's not that it necessarily has to be 100%, but there has to be connections, so that the child sees themselves being successful, sees themselves being a part of, being included, because we know belonging is a core need. And I think that that's a big issue that a lot of parents are facing, in that we are living in environments that don't represent who we are, and our children are having to have they're experiencing a lot more sort of tension and pressure about who they are, what they want, how they learn, than they need to be. So it is critical that parents are super aware of that, and being open and willing to make those adjustments, because that's another part of it, is that we get locked into a certain socioeconomics level, or community culture, and we can't shift. So it's critical, parents.
And what about a parent's? I know we talked about parent sleep and how that affects their child. Can you talk about a parent's mental health and well-being, and how that may affect their child?
Oh, absolutely. We know about between 41% to 48% of parents feels distressed overall. So it is essential that parents put their own mask on first. It does start with a healthy body and healthy practices. So that's quality sleep, healthy eating, hydration, exercise, vitamin D, and making sure we're going to the doctor. So it's making sure that we're starting with a healthy body. And then also, so what are some of those other parts of being mentally healthy? That we have a variety of coping skills, a
Mm,
variety of self-care skills. Let me back it up. And when I think about self-care, that includes coping and soothing, problem solving, that tools. We have enough people that we feel safe with, that we can ask for help. And again, those healthy body habits. We have enough activities that are fulfilling. We have enough relationships where there is reciprocity in getting our needs and our wants met. We have the ability to know what our thoughts and feelings and behaviors are, and what our triggers are, and that we have a life purpose. So
mm.
those are this some most of the definition, but there are more. But it's critical that parents put their own mask on first.
That's good. You're so good. What about Dr. Sherri, autism? I feel like, we're
Mhm.
talking more about it now, and we're I don't know, quote unquote, seeing more of it. Is it that we're recognizing it earlier, or do you feel like there is just that spectrum where it's just more prevalent? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think that we are definitely better at diagnosing it. And so that's one. Candidly, I do think that the spectrum, the continuum of
Mm,
symptoms has gotten really wide.
mm,
I think it's gotten too wide. So I do
mm,
think at some point the pendulum is going to
mm,
swing back a bit, because and let me say this, that it almost seems like with every 10 years or so there is a diagnosis that gets a lot of attention. At one point it was
mm,
the bipolar, that at one point it was an overdiagnosis of bipolar disorder, that it was an overdiagnosis of ADHD, and I think that we've transitioned into the autism spectrum disorder. But I do respect the fact that people want to better understand what is going on.
yeah.
And I want to encourage listeners that it doesn't have to be a deficiency,
Mm.
disorder, challenge, or diagnosis to be able to explain who we are, what we are, and our characteristics.
I had a speech pathologist patient the other day, and she was talking about how, kind of similar, that you did almost like a overdiagnosis. Like she's like, these are kids that we may have just said like they're a little quirky like years ago, but now they're kind of having like a diagnosis now. Dr. Allen, I know like you're a neurologist. I want to just kind of bring you up briefly and just same question in terms of your thoughts on, as a neurologist on autism, and just is it something that's more prevalent? Is the diagnosis, the criteria just being brought in? Are we becoming just more aware of it, and so we're just recognizing it earlier or more prevalent? What are your thoughts?
So the thing about autism, and it's something that is close to me, and there's something that I'm comfortable sharing. Sorry, my arm. You think you turn off everything. As I was saying, there's something that's really close to me because my son, we found out, my wife and I, that he was diagnosed with autism over 2.5 years ago.
Mm,
And so just being a neurologist and seeing some of those symptoms, and one thing I can say, I think it's a combination of both, where there has been a broader spectrum of putting some of the disorders together,
mm,
and the thought process of doing that, and even talking with my colleagues, is making sure those people get tools. And so they can get tools and you can help them thrive and survive and move forward with it. And then also, it's just the education of that and us being aware of what to look for. And so when you educate more, you can screen more. You screen more, the
mm,
numbers are going to go up from there. And so, and it's unfortunate that, if we had a time machine and had the knowledge that we had now, and go back and make some diagnosis for people that do have autism, there would have been more people that would have had autism. There's been comments to say that it's like, I don't remember autism being that prevalent. It was there. Unfortunately, the diagnostic criteria
mm,
weren't set for people to find that. And unfortunately, they were misdiagnosed as something else. And even more unfortunate, they were placed in facilities where you couldn't even give them a chance to get that diagnosis, where it's like, oh, they're just a mute, or they would say other words that we didn't even say today. So it's there. But the thing is that, it's funny being a neurologist and also a parent of a child that has autism. It's just that, like, once you get that diagnosis, you know, they're still that same person for them. And it's a touchy subject. And it's hard because there is a wide range and there is a wide spectrum. And back in the day, they used to say, spectrum, but they broaden it to say, look, this is autism. Be that it was Asperger's or all the diagnosis of it, it was helped them to get tools to help sure they can thrive forward. And the hard part about it is that it's not one clear cut. Like if you see someone that has autism, oh, they're just going to be like this. There can be a range where there can be people that are high functioning. There are some people that may not be able to be verbal or say very few words. But at the end of the day, being a parent, they're your child. And that's something that's like close to me. And unfortunately, there's been people that have been using that as like political tools. And at the end of the day, that no matter how you feel on the subject, kids need help. And I took an oath to one, do no harm, and then also help. And I think that's big within this.
That's good. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Allen. Dr. Sherri, I wanted to wrap up with one final question for you. And I feel like you mentioned earlier about the importance of being kind of mentally well and putting our own mask on as we care for our children and other people in our family. How important is community and relationships to our mental health?
How important? Well, it is essential because when we think about being mentally well, again, one of the criteria is to have, and I'm going to quantify at least 5 to 6 fulfilling relationships, and there's reciprocity in that. And then another aspect of being mentally healthy is having a positive identity. And it's not just an individual positive identity, but it's also having a collective positive identity so that how we think about our community, how do we think about sort of the different aspects of ourselves, that's essential, because if we don't think positively about our community, our neighborhood, our families, at least at some level, then that does impact our sense of self, our self acceptance, our self-worth, and our self-value. So that's an essential piece. And especially post-COVID, we've seen so much more challenges with being isolated. So it is essential that, and though COVID has been over for a few years now, that we lean back into creating community for ourselves, considering going back to work at maybe one day a week if you could, because we know that the hybrid worker is often stressed in different ways because they're lacking that community that they would have gotten going to work, which affects their parenting.
And how has the prevalence of devices challenged or made building friendship and relationships for both children and adults? How have you seen that? I find also often when I see young people, maybe just graduating high school, going into college, I ask them, how do you meet people how do you make friends now that you're not in high school? And they have a really hard time. They're like, I go on social media and they almost use that as their exchange for interacting with someone, and it is interacting, it's virtual, but I feel like devices have almost made it a little bit harder for us to make friends.
Oh, well, I think it's how we define friends. So that's one thing, how we define friends and how we define community and closeness. And so I think for some of our children, it's different for them. I do think you said how it's impacted our children because many of them don't have the social connections.
Mm,
There's a lot more social anxiety. I mean,
mm,
it's almost like that diagnosis has gone up. We know it's gone up because there's fear with abandonment, rejection, and then how the constant judging of
mm,
themselves with other people. So I mean that's an issue. But it does start with the family system, that we've got to figure out how we think about devices, how we use devices,
mm,
and setting limits with that. And but also parents being willing to set those hard limits, and also replace the
yeah.
devices with other entities. And a lot of times children, they're not playing board games, they're not going outside, they're not doing individual reading, and as a family oftentimes they're not doing those things as well. So it's got to be a
Mhm.
family shift in terms of how we entertain and educate
Yeah.
and soothe ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're so right. I tried to talk to Carl, and our child's 3, but I talked to him about phones, because these kids are just growing up with phones so young.
Right.
And um oftentimes I feel like you may cave in and get your kid a phone because you don't want them to be the only one without a phone. Right. It's like you don't want them to be the only kid without a phone because now they feel like everybody else has a phone and I don't. Everybody else is communicating, on this,
Right.
but I'm not
Yes.
able to.
Yes.
And so when I was talking to Carl, I was my husband about it. I was like, it's almost like we have to foster a community of parents who are going to kind of collectively say like, okay, let's kind of hold on the devices. Let's kind of hold on the phone because if I don't have a phone, but you also don't have a phone, now me and you can talk and now I don't feel isolated because I don't have a phone. So it almost takes like you mentioned the family replacing, devices with games, but it's almost like a community approach almost so that
Yes.
that kid still feels like this is okay. There's nothing wrong because I don't have a phone and I can communicate with my friends in other ways and still feel okay.
Well, but I think it's also being opened, because Robert and I, my husband and I, still have a landline.
Mm. Does it really?
And yeah, and I have it right here to my left. We have like 3 landlines. We do. And so when we had our child who was in foster care, we would allow her to use that phone, because I think
Mm,
another part of this that parents really are just have been naive and unwilling to address is that we are allowing our children full access to a life entity
mm,
experience, a fantasy that we're not a part of, and we're not
mm,
aware of what is going on. When my nieces and nephew were over here one day, and she was 10, and she was in the room on her device with like 4 or 5 other little girls, and we were like, what are you doing? And they were on some type of platform we didn't have access to. And so
mm,
with parents, if we're not going to um, uh, get all the passwords and the usernames and all the fenced and all the fake ones, all the hidden ones, and be able to really navigate that whole system, then we've got to be willing to um, um, I'm gonna say restrain how
mm,
much usage there is, because we
mm,
do know that sex trafficking, sexual grooming, we know that it's real. It's not new. It's digital in the way that is being manifested in many ways at this point. But we have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to keep our children safe.
yeah, that's good. That's good. Whew. Okay, Dr. Broadwater, any last comments? Anything else? I feel like we could talk for hours about so many things when it comes to the mental health of our kids, of ourselves. Any lasting thoughts?
Great sleep and healthy eating and hydration and enough exercise saves the day many times.
Thank you. All right. Well, that has been an amazing discussing. Thank you so much, Dr. Sherri Simpson Broadwater, child and adult psychiatrist, Dr. Shayna Smith, pediatrician here in Atlanta, Dr. Christopher Allen, sleep medicine doctor and a neurologist in Michigan from Wayne State. We're great doctors in man. I feel like I have to say that every single time. This has been a virtual health summit with UrbanMD TV. We cannot wait to see you for season 2. Let me tell you, if you saw season 1, what is coming for you in season 2 is going to be so amazing. It's going to blow your mind. So we can't wait to see you. Make sure you follow us on all social media so that you are aware when season 2 drops. Thanks so much. Take care.